Hello! Welcome to another day of the Internet Measurement Village. Joining us today is Natalia and Anton from the Digital Security Lab in Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us. And today they're going to be telling us all about how they've been working on setting up a nationwide internet censorship measurement system in Ukraine. Thanks for joining us, Natalia and Anton.
Thank you, Arturo, for having us. What we want to share is our experience in how we try to establish a nationwide system of monitoring website blocking in Ukraine. In Ukraine, the internet censorship is complicated because, first of all, parts of Ukraine are not controlled by the government, like the peninsula of Crimea is annexed by Russia, and some regions of the eastern Ukraine are also controlled by Russia-based separatists. At the main part of Ukraine, according to some presidential regulations, some Russian social media websites, but also other sites were banned there some years ago. There are lots of questions about the legal side of this, but our presentation covers only the technical side of this. We realized that in Ukraine there were no system on monitoring if the internet service providers apply those restrictions, those bans, if they really block access to those sites according to that presidential decision. Also in the annexed Crimea, as we knew that there are restrictions that apply to Russian government because they get this institution, Roskomnadzor, that keeps a large catalog of websites that should be blocked to any ISPs who act according to Russian legislation. And the situation in the eastern regions was unclear because it's kind of a gray zone in terms of legislation and how do ISPs operate there. So we tried to literally monitor if the ISPs block these sites, how do they, and are there any patterns, are there any consistent findings that we could find? Our idea, to establish this, we used the Uniprobe application, but first of all, we developed a methodology on how will we conduct these measurements, which data will be obtained, and how will we analyze that data. For this project, I was kind of a project manager, so my field of work was mostly developing the methodology and coordinating with people who conducted monitor these tests in all the regions. And Natalia, who is my colleague, she was in charge of data analysis, and well, she'll cover this part more broadly. So the methodology was based on using, as I said, OONI app, meaning that people who conducted the measurements, we call them monitors, they used their own mobile devices, except for people who worked in Donbass in Crimea. For security, for safety reasons, we provided them with clean devices. So they used their personal mobile phones with OONI app installed to conduct tests, measurements on public Wi-Fi from different internet service providers. Because we discovered that on different access points, tests may run not as smoothly as we would like to. We asked them to rerun those tests at least twice. So when they conducted measurement, they conducted at least 2 measurements in a row to provide more sustainable data. And after the tests finished, we asked those people to copy the report ID field, the value of this field, so we could parse the data from this exact, this very measurement from the OONI servers using OONI API to collect this data and to gather data from all the measurements to provide further analysis. And during the month where those measurements took place, we asked monitors to conduct them on a weekly basis, especially we asked them if they could make those tests, launch those tests the same day of the week, like each Monday or each Sunday, etc. To do these measurements, we had to arrange custom website lists. We used different lists for the main part of Ukraine, for the Crimea, and for occupied part of Donetsk and Luhansk region. We to compile this list, we used OONI Run. It's a tool that when you can just copy and paste the list of the sites you want to be injected, and it will generate a pretty long URL that you have to somehow share to people who got OONI app installed on their mobile devices, so they could open this link to start the tests. We found that the easiest way to share this link is using email, because in messengers there are some limits on the length of the message and some other issues that we faced. So links in emails worked pretty smoothly. To conduct this monitoring, we got 23 people in regions of Ukraine in the main part, and also we got 4 people who conducted measurements in Crimea, and three people who conducted measurements in occupied parts of Donetsk and Luhansk region. We started with offline event when step by step we went through the measurement process, through the data transfer and acquisition. And so, as I told before, our idea was to gather report IDs from each test to get data available for the analysis. And I'll ask Natalia to jump in here and describe the data analysis process.
Right. So I was tasked with the data analysis. I accessed the data stored at OONI servers using OONI API. When you feed a report ID into OONI API, it gives you in return a whole pile of stuff in JSON format. So I parse the JSON, I get what I need from there and convert it to CSV for convenience. We didn't use all the attributes that OONI gathers for every measurement. The most important attributes are website name, of course, then provider name or autonomous system number, connectivity status, meaning is it available or not, then control management, OONI does actually two measurements. It measures also the availability of a website from control point to make sure that it's really inaccessible only in their place of interest. Then there are several predefined blocking reasons that are also in this data. OONI tries to guess why it was, like how it was blocked. Then there is DNS data, HTTP code, and response text. So as you see, the OONI doesn't give you a clear yes or no answer. You have to somehow determine from all this data, is it blocked or not? And surprisingly, it's not that simple. First, we look at the response text. And of course, if it says, "Dear, sorry, the website is blocked for legal reason" or something, yeah, it's definitely blocked. But some ISPs don't bother with this explanation, and sometimes they just cut it and website just inaccessible, and you cannot be 100% sure that it's definitely blocked or it's not some kind of a glitch. And as far as I know, the official position of OONI is that the website is considered blocked only if there is this fingerprint, the text, the website is blocked. But we know for sure that it's not, it cannot be the only like sign of blocking. So we dig into data and we establish some thresholds, some patterns that we think show that website is blocked. So first, if the domain name resolves to localhost or provider's IP, yeah, we are pretty sure that it's blocked. I mean, I cannot think of any other reason why the website would resolve to provider's IP or localhost. So we put it down as blocked. Then if the website consistently returns same error for months, yeah, we suppose that it's blocked. Again, it's really hard to think of some alternative explanation. And we tried to look at some patterns, not just isolated measurements. Like if provider resolves the domain to localhost in one region, but in another region, the same provider just returns all kind of inconsistent errors, we still think that it is blocked in this other region because we presume that the more definitive proof of blocking in this first region is like additional proof of blocking in the second region. But these cases are actually rare. Mostly they just resolve everything to localhost or IP or provider's IP. So we were pretty sure that it's definitely blocked. Yeah, at this point I return to...
This is my part. He figured out that this methodology is not probably as consistent as we supposed, because when people use their own mobile devices, you meet a lot of technical unpredictable things, like they use all unupdated operation systems like old Android or old iOS that cannot be updated, that cause some malfunction. But also because of different setups or the access points, different lease time for the IP address, sometimes tests are interrupted. This is the case. This is a problem, especially when tests run really slowly or take an unpredictable amount of time, up to 2 or 3 hours. When our monitors started tests on some access points, they could not predict if this will be finished in time and if the data will be not damaged. Also, we've seen different patterns of data, like one site is blocked 1 week and it shows up being accessible the next week, and then it changes. And also the huge part underestimated during the design of this research was the value of the human factor, because you work with people, because people conduct these measurements. They could have different problems. They could be not able to conduct measurement in time. Also, they could, got sick. They could go on vacation or have any issues. So if you do not have any backup system on how to receive those measurements for these days when you're supposed to obtain them, you will mostly lose the data, which is especially important for the not so safe regions, because monitors in Crimea or in occupied Donbass and Donetsk and Luhansk areas, they got some concerns about their own safety. So if they felt insecure, they stopped the testing. They did not want to bring attention to them as persons who sit in some coffee shop and staring at their mobile phone during 3 hours and doing something strange things that could cause unwanted attention to them. But still, we were able to obtain some results from this data. And Natalia, it's your turn.
Yeah, right. So as Anton mentioned, sometimes it's hard to say if it's true dynamic of blocking, like, or if it's just a glitch in the data, in the software or something. Like when 1 month the website is blocked, the next month is not blocked. You can never be 100% sure that it reflects reality and not some software or human problems. So we can only paint some very wide picture, and nevertheless we were able to establish some findings with a reasonable level of certainty. And one of the most interesting one was that Eastern occupied territories are split into 2 parts: Donetsk People Republic and Lugansk People Republic, 2 people republics. And we find out that they behave very differently when it comes to website blockings. Lugansk LPR providers generally block much more, and Donetsk providers are very lackluster. Some don't block anything. We don't know the reason for it, but it was one of the most pronounced patterns. And the only website that was blocked by absolutely all Eastern providers was a local news website. It was not some activist website, not some big Ukrainian influential media, just some very small local website, probably because the local stings at these occupiers hurt the most, because it was like so close to them. They really hated it or something. And Crimean data suggests that some local providers take initiative and block websites that are not in the official Russian blocking list. Probably we should have mentioned that these providers at occupied territories, they generally block providers according to Russian instructions, but Crimean ISP for some reason hated some additional websites and blocked them as well. And as for non-occupied territories, here the most prolific blockers were big ISPs. 3 of them blocked just almost everything. But it's not really clear what are their criteria. Some ISPs don't even block the half of the list. Some block almost everything. We can only document it, but we don't have an explanation, unfortunately. Why does an ISP decide to block this website and do not block other websites? All of these websites are in the official blocking list. Anyway, the blockings were mostly consistent throughout the year. We didn't see any major decrease or increase, and again, some minor decrease or increase could be always attributed to some errors.
All this data is public, so it's available on our Google Disk in CSV files. If there's any interest, we can move them whenever to GitHub or just send it to you if you have any requests. So it's public, it's accessible for the researcher or for any reason that you may find them useful. The conclusion are that we do not consider this project as a total failure, but still our goal is that that methodology that we choose does not provide you some consistency that we expected for, mostly because of takes lots of resources to manage this monitoring network of different people with different devices. It looks like you, well, in your everyday your everyday job is to try to remotely troubleshoot people who conduct tests and receive different types of technical problems. Sometimes they are new, sometimes they are old, but you still cannot help them to deal with them. And as I said, this is a human factor because people could disappear. They could sometimes they cannot conduct measurements on time. Sometimes those measurements take lots of time, and they spend 3, 4, 6 working hours, but test results are damaged. So they did their work, and but because of the technical side of the provider, they measured or they set up of the access point or they their mobile devices. The data cannot be used in the analysis. And also, as Natalia described, we got a general picture of how the blockings are different among, well, how large ISPs impose those blockings versus small ISPs, and there are some minor changes in Crimea, in occupied regions in the east, but these findings they're not enough to feed some another hypothesis to use them for some actionable thing. And the other thing that we were concerned about, that sometimes these results could be misused and maybe do more harm, because in some regions monitors were approached by some law enforcement and even Secret Service authorities with the request to provide the list of the ISPs who do not apply blockings of the whole list, so we could even endanger those ISPs by sharing this data. So I think this is in broad strokes everything about our effort to build this nationwide monitoring system. If you have any questions, we would try to answer them. Arturo, so if we could proceed now to question, that would be great.
Yeah, here we go. Well, thank you so much, Natalia and Anton, for that really interesting presentation. And also thank you so much for the really important work that you and the rest of your team at Digital Security Lab Ukraine are doing. It's really great stuff. So yeah, I would invite people to leave your questions in the chat or on the pad that you can see here on the screen. We've received already some questions that I will now read to you. So
okay.
We have the first question that comes from David F. And the question is, were there other Uniprobe results from Ukraine other than the ones provided by your volunteers? Did you consider those in addition to your own measurements?
No, because we did measurements, as I said at the beginning, on the custom website lists, and they are not something that doesn't change, because this legislation changes. Some websites disappear from those lists, some not. So OONI Run is a great and flexible tool, because you can just rearrange that lists for websites that you need to measure and generate another link for measurements and conduct this. So our goal was to conduct measurements exactly on these lists that were in that president's decisions, and some other lists for the Crimea and for the Eastern Territories. So the answer is no.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I at this point have a follow-up to that, which is, what did you consider adding those custom lists to the global, like to the official, let's say, Citizen Lab testing list, so that probes from Ukraine would be testing them automatically? And if not, like what was the the reasoning around that?
That sounds reasonable, but that requires resources for keeping these lists up to date, because some of them, websites are still present in those lists, but those websites does not exist anymore. So there are lots of websites that closed, maybe due to those blockings or to other reasons, and also people who wrote that list of websites, they are not technical savvy, because sometimes this was long URLs on the same domains or on the same subdomains, because people, I think, thought that they could block only some pages with the sites who got HTTPS connection. So it's all messy, and it requires not lots of attention, but it requires some resources to keep these lists updated, and also conduct further analysis. So your idea is reasonable, but still it's not like some automated thing that will work on its own. You still have to do something of your work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess OONI Run was allowed you to be a bit more like agile and quick in distributing the lists.
Yeah. OONI Run for these types of measurements is quite a flexible tool, which is cool.
Nice. Okay, so then we have another question that comes from Maria. She asks, to what extent do you think a feature for automatic Uniprobe testing would help solve some of the challenges that you encountered?
I think we should define automated. Sorry. What do we mean as an automated unit test? Because still they should be conducted on a regular basis on different ISPs somehow. So you got to develop some kind of methodology on how devices with OONI app should be present on that on some local network that is provided by different ISPs that act in different regions, and usually it's not the case when you may just leave any device there and run tests in a fixed period of time. So it's not like you go to 5 or I know 10 coffee shops and you ask people there to plug in, Raspberry Pi who would run with some tests with cron. So it's not as clean on the setup side because it should be used on mobile devices or on desktops and by people and in different time. So this is complicated. Automated system would be great, but automated should be described in terms of who, how is it set up, how is it checked, etc.
Yeah, I guess there's this whole in your project you had a lot of work that was beyond just running the tests, also in the physical world in a way, like going from one place to
and it was the main part of the issues, because find those public Wi-Fi's to conduct measurements to make sure that those public Wi-Fi's will stay public. Find you a reason to stay there for 4 hours, for 3 to 4 hours. So if it's a cafe, you may visit them and drink coffee, drink tea, but it requires some cash to spend. It requires you some schedule if you want to conduct the measurements on different ISPs at the same day. So it should take you the whole day. And if for some reasons the tests take longer than you expected, or it provides you corrupted data, so you get to rerun those tests, and you must find the time for these relaunch tests, fit it into your schedule, and you get usually other things to do. So this total management system, which is not the part of the technical side, but still it requires lots of attention, and it provides lots of unexpected issues.
Yeah, those are that's very useful insight. I think many people that are working on similar projects will find your experience and your You know?
That's what exactly we find useful in our project, that if someone will try to establish some kind of measurement system similar to ours, that you should pay much more attention to the design, and not on the technical side, but on the human side, on who will be conducting measurements, where, how, and how often. So
yeah, no, that's very useful information. So we have another question that comes from Sergey, and the question is, what would you change in design of the experiments based on your learnings to make it more efficient? What was the hardest thing to manage, and what you consider the biggest failure?
The biggest failure, well, Natalia, maybe you have something to say, because I took all the stage.
Yeah, I can have something to say. Of course, I also screwed up a couple of times. If I had to do it again, I would probably set up some kind of checklist for data that I receive every month, because sometimes it is okay. I can tell about one situation where I didn't implement enough checks. 1 month in one region, the guys who wanted for doing field work, they messed up ISN, autonomous system numbers, and provider names. So I thought that the data was coming from one provider, but in fact it was coming from another provider. And then I eventually caught this problem and fixed it. But for a while I saw a pattern where there wasn't anything because of this mix-up. So yeah, if I did it again, I would set up a checklist. What I have to check every time I get this data: are the ISNs correct, are providers' names correct, if the number of measurements correct, are there any lost data, something.
On my side, I think I wouldn't use again people's personal mobile devices, because it makes the things complicated. It sounds like a great idea, because you don't have to allocate funds for buying devices for measurements, and that's why OONI app is great. But in the end, it provides you lots of technical issues that could be, some of them I think could be avoided if we would just provide them with I think mostly Android devices, clean and set up for measurements only. If you will think about building some kind of measurements like this, I would suggest you to talk about including these devices in the budget. This might look like an overkill, but I think this could really help to solve some of these tests problems with the amount of time, with the application not running, with something not updating, some malfunction, etc. So dedicated new devices, and I think Android, not iOS.
Yeah, I think when you have a project that is large scale and long term, you need to have as much consistency as possible. Implement a protocol and follow it, get everyone the same device. everything should be standardized, and then you will have better results.
So the biggest failure, maybe in general, that it was inconsistent because there were so many unpredictable things that we can make general suggestions about the results, but there are lots of gaps that were not filled due to different issues that I described before. Arturo?
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, so we have another question that comes from Simone, and he asks, what changes to the OONI data format would you recommend, if any, to simplify processing and increase the sustainability of the effort?
Maybe it's for Natalia and maybe even to you too.
Yeah, it's a great question, but I think I'm not really ready to answer it like right now. I really need to get back to data and look through it again, and probably I will come up with something and then get back to you.
Well, I got some quite simple idea. As I said before, our workflow was to conduct a test, then go to test results, copy the report ID, the value of the report ID field, and send it to us. So the possibility to obtain this report ID number and send it to us to make it easier would be beneficial for all the this thing, because people sometimes got stuck into going to results, trying to copy pasting it wrongly, and all these things. So if they could obtain this field, I totally understand that this is not a user experience issue that is common for all the OONI users. It was useful for our design because we found it. So
yeah, but it's important for every like large-scale analysis, because you need to get all these report IDs anyway somehow, and I think it's important to make them more transferable.
Yeah, because well, that's an important part of information, and if it would be accessible somehow easier, I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, Simone says, please do reach out if you have any feedback about our data format. I mean, I will, I also echo that, definitely any sort of input from such a, advanced and heavy user of our data is gold for us. Like, if you can, if anything does come to mind, please do not hesitate to reach out to us about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in general, there I didn't experience any like huge problems that I would like remember. So if anything comes up, it will be minor, yes. But in general, the format was okay.
Okay, that's good to hear. And on the topic of the report ID, you'll be happy to hear that I think a feature that we have now in the latest version of the app makes that significantly easier. In that it's now possible to, like, there's a share button, like I think it's labeled as share or copy Explorer URL, where basically it copies the URL of a measurement, which includes the report ID, directly to the clipboard. So that basically means that you don't have to tell people to like go into the JSON or like find a the place where the report ID, there's somehow a native sharing capability. Maybe that helps you.
Okay, I will look into the OONI app later,
Yeah.
because
it's
uneasy to do this at the same time with the talking.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we have another question, comes from Federico. And he asks, are you using the anomaly confirmed status from the OONI measurement? or are you implementing your own blocking detection?
It's your part, I think.
Yeah,
again.
I'm just.
I think this was in reference to
Maybe this is about this part. No?
Do you mean the data has this blocking reason? There are like 4 options, I think: DNS, HTTP, or something else. Do you mean this?
I think you were talking about in your second slide about the analysis. You were speaking about like how you took like some fields from the OONI JSON and you extracted it, and then you were trying to ask yourself like, is it blocked? And you mentioned that somehow OONI only flags as blocked things for which we have a known block page, whereas you also wanted to detect additional cases where, for example, the DNS was resolving to localhost, or, for example, cases in which maybe there's a new block page that we don't know, or like measurements are failing consistently over time.
Yeah, that's right. OONI flags their measurements that indicate inaccessibility, but doesn't have fingerprints, are just anomalies. So yeah, we implemented some kind of a process that would look at these anomalies and establish which one of these anomalies we would consider blockings. So I mean, I just don't understand. Do you mean that there is some kind of additional, I don't know, features of OONI that I missed that would help us do it?
To be honest, I'm not sure. It might have also been that at the time we were not even exposing the stuff in the API. It could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have like now a anomaly and a confirmed flag in the API itself.
Yeah, I think I saw it. I saw it, and again, it wasn't quite clear what it meant, and the how do you say? I mean, it's still like it's confirmed anomaly, but it still is not blocking. So in any case, we needed some kind of a protocol that would help us say, okay, this is blocked, and just because it's confirmed anomaly, it doesn't literally like say us enough to be sure. So we decided to implement our own process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for sure, for like the anomaly and confirmed is somehow a bit limiting in that it's a lot of stuff does not fall under the confirmed category, and you end up with a lot of anomalous stuff that you really need to do a bit of processing for the specific, like context and country. So yeah. I see there's a comment coming from Simone again as a follow-up. He says maybe we can implement bulk export of report IDs if it's something that could be helpful.
Yeah, I think it would be, well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a pretty easy low-hanging fruit. I think, yeah, we should definitely consider that. So another thing, a comment comes from Andres from Slack, and Andres from Venezuela Sin Filtro, and which is a similar project in Venezuela to what you're doing in Ukraine, is asking, would you be interested in exchanging our similar experience at another time?
Yeah, I think we are already chatting in that OONI Slack.
There we go.
I responded, so yes. Well,
very nice.
I tried to jump in and also open the Slack app on my mobile phone.
And he goes on to say, yeah, there's a lot of benefit to streamlining things for campaigns that are checking lots of reports, especially those with technical analysis capacity. So, you know, there's that. So yeah, I guess I have a question as well, which I guess is somehow related to the you mentioned at some point that you saw like some differences, some regional differences in the blocking that you noticed in Ukraine. I was wondering if beyond like the Crimea region, where you saw you know, that basically some ISPs there were implementing the block list from Russia, from Roskomnadzor. I was wondering if you also noticed other cases of, let's say, censorship leakage in like places other than Crimea, like if you saw some overlap of the Russian censorship in other parts of Ukraine.
The thing is, it's not like a leakage. It's just Crimean ISPs follow direct orders from Russia, so they just take this list and blocked everything in it. But it's just that in addition, they also block some other websites that are not blocked in Russia, but somehow they blocked in Crimea. Just because Crimean ISPs don't like them, or because local Crimean authorities don't like them, and that doesn't happen in Eastern occupied territories. In they mostly just follow Russian script, and they're not so initiative. Yes, for regional differences, I don't know. The only interesting one probably was in non-occupied territories where. As I said before, most big ISPs block almost everything, but there was one city when they blocked less websites than in like other regions. So somehow one specific city was like an outpost for internet freedom. We don't know why. What's so special about this city? Just
Wow.
the ISPs there blocked less than in other regions.
Wow.
And also, we had a hypothesis that maybe on a local level there could be some kind of censorship, that local governments could push local ISPs to block some local media or other websites that criticize authorities a lot. And we asked our monitors to create these lists of local media or some problem sites, and we asked them to check and run tests on those lists. But well, this showed that our hypothesis was wrong, because we did not find any local censorship on a local level, which is I think cool, because we prove that this don't exist. So not having any data, not having proofs on this is a good result, I think, also.
Thanks for that. So we have another question coming from Simone. He says, maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but did you consider signs of TLS-based blocking, like TLS errors, to classify blocking of websites?
Yeah, I didn't mention that specifically, but yeah, that was one of common errors that we took into consideration when I said that we used consistent error messages as a sign of blocking. One of those errors could be TLS related, right? Yeah, that happened.
So we have another question coming from Andres. How much of the challenges of the projects came from the number of ISPs?
This is an issue because, first of all, you got to find who are the most popular ISPs in the region, and it's not as easy as it could look at the first glance. And also, if there are lots of ISPs, because there were some regions where this was almost a monopoly, like 2 or 3 big ISPs, and there were also regions where there were different ISPs which are popular up to 8, I think, and of course they could not be all covered by tests because well, we tried to limit the working hours for each monitor so that won't be overwhelming. So we had to choose and to skip measuring on small ISPs.
Yeah, which means you cannot say this website is blocked or not blocked in this city. You have to say which ISPs because there are so many of them.
Yeah.
On the bright side, we have so many ISPs, so that's why we have such a good internet connection because there's a competition.
And he asks another few follow-up questions, which I think help qualify it better. He says, did you catch censorship that seemed accidental or misconfiguration of firewall middle boxes? Are these geographic differences explained by different ISPs?
It's really hard to say from the data if it's like real censorship or something went wrong somehow in this in the process. So I don't know if it's some glitch in the ISP system or middle box or whatever. We just see that it's blocked with some level of certainty, but we don't know exactly what's going on there.
Well, and because tests were conducted on public Wi-Fi's, which are often in restaurants, coffee shops, etc. Of course, there could be some firewall restrictions applied by local system administrator, just forbidding to visit some kind of websites according to their business vision. And we also cannot be sure if this and how to measure this kind of interference on the local level, on the level of the access point.
Yeah. And you think these differences in geographies could be explained by the fact that different ISPs implement different blocking?
Yeah, and that's for sure. The different ISPs block they employ different technical strategies and they block different websites. They don't all strictly follow the official list of blockings, and they block websites in different ways. And it's like every ISP just does whatever they want, basically.
I see.
I mean, we have at least one ISP in Kyiv that on principle didn't block anything. He was very vocal about it.
Yeah, but his position is little but resistant ISPs who denied that those restrictions are legal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question why some ISP block almost everything and some just block 20 websites. Unfortunately, we don't know that.
And that's another question on how should you approach these results. So you got the results, then you get a city, a major city, when most of the sites from the blocking list are accessible to public. How should you communicate this? How should you communicate this to avoid pressure on ISPs? So you can just report it to the media, and media could approach this information like, oh, you know, there are number of ISPs who do not follow the law, who support aggression, Russian aggression, etc. And those ISPs could meet pressure from law enforcement, etc. So there's another question on what should you do with when you see such an anomaly? How should you communicate it? How should you handle it?
Yeah. So we have another comment, I guess, comes from Federico. He says we are working on a new API endpoint providing aggregate data. This means summaries and statistics rather than individual measurements. And he says that this might fit your use case very well. Like basically,
it depends on how it is summarizing, what is aggregating. I mean, for me, it's always better when the data is like really raw and you can do whatever you want with them, because that summarization might not fit your particular case. So it's always better to like do it yourself. But I think for many people who don't do the analysis part but just want to learn something about what happens in like with the website on this region, they might really be happy with this functionality.
Yeah. And I would add to this that we're also working on batch export endpoints that will basically give you, you know, sort of instead of having to page through the API as you are doing with your report IDs, you can just send a request and then you get back like a CSV or like a JSON dump of all the data that you need without having to like scrape it continuously. So maybe that is a thing that could help you.
Yeah, at first I thought that it's not a big deal. I can write my script and hit the server. And then I remember that at some point when I hit the server too hard, it started to block me, and I couldn't actually get the data. I got some like 500 hours.
I see.
So yeah, maybe it's better to send a request and get this batch and not overload the servers.
Yeah. So we have a last question, I guess, at this point from Simone. He asks, do you have a ballpark estimate of how many websites you checked for blocking which were not using TLS?
Like how many websites didn't use TLS?
Yeah, how many of the blocked websites were not on TLS?
Blocked.
Yeah,
I don't know.
of the blocked websites.
Half of it, maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, I can look at the data and send you the exact number. But up to half of websites probably didn't use it. I mean, it's not like super popular. Like it's not widespread as much as we would.
Well, sometimes these are local media, really small sites, and their technical side is not as you would expect it.
Okay, yeah, that's useful. So do you have any closing remarks or things you would like to say to the Internet Measurement Village folk listening to us?
Well, to say the truth, it was a hard project. We were exhausted by it, and we really underestimated the number of the resources it will require, especially human resources, your working hours, and also because of this inconsistent data, etc. It's also stressful when you put lots of efforts and you do not have any clear results, and it could be not making you in a good mood. So, but I'm happy to share this with the community. I was happy to share it during the interviews on OONI because this gives you a feeling that it was successful in some kind, that we got some of this testing for the system and we found parts that should be improved when you design the research, or that could be sometimes used by OONI developers to improve some functionality, etc. So sharing this is good to feel that this project, well, was kind of success, even if the initial goal was not totally fulfilled, I'd say.
I don't know. It was fun, actually.
On your part.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Natalia and Anton, for joining us today in this other episode of the Internet Measurement Village. And thank you so
Arturo,
much.
and all the team.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you also so much for the really important work that you folks are doing in Ukraine and all your colleagues at Digital Security Lab Ukraine. Thank you really so much.
Thanks for having us.
A pleasure. And thank you to everybody who joined us online, live for the stream, to the people that are watching this in the future. I'll remind you that tomorrow we have another presentation at the same time on this same channel from Maria Grazia Chirinos, and it's going to be in the Spanish language, and it will be on measuring internet censorship in Venezuela. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good day.
Bye.